ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದಲ್ಲ. ಯಾವ ಡಿಸಿಪ್ಲಿನ್? ಓಕೆ. ಹಾಂ, ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು. ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ? ಹಾಂ, ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಡ್ತೀರಿ. ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ ಸರ್. ಒಂದು ನಿಮಿಷ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬನ್ನಿ. ಇನ್ನೂ 3 ನಿಮಿಷ ಇದೆ ಸರ್. ತೊಂದರೆ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಮಗರ ಅಡಿಯ ಜಾವದಲ್ಲಿ ಐಡಿಯಾ Dear participants, we have Professor T.R. Maruthi sir as a resource person for this lecture session. Dr. T.R. Maruthi sir is presently serving as a professor of law and is teaching international law in the Department of Studies in Law, University of Mysore. His education qualification are like MA, LLB, PhD. He obtained from University of Mysore. He has been awarded his PhD on the thesis titled Legal Regime of the Seabed, a Critical Study from the University of Mysore. He has published more than 80 publications in nationally and internationally reputed journals and shared his views as innovative resource person in more than 150 conferences and workshops. He has served as the chairman of the Department of Studies in Law and a director of Mysore School of Law. His areas of research are law of the sea, air, and space law, international economic law, private international law, international trade, cybersecurity, human rights, international humanitarian law, refugee law, diplomacy, transnational and supranational issues, vulnerable sections of society and UN operations, etc. He had been to many countries on invitation to deliver innovative talks on various conferences, workshops, and he also conducted a good number of workshops at the national and international level. And now, sir is going to do a lecture in this session on the topic law on armed conflict. The topic is law on armed conflict, or otherwise law of war simply. And tomorrow on the same time on the other topic, that is human rights. I welcome wholeheartedly Professor T.R. Maruthi sir to this online lecture session on behalf of the HRDC and also on behalf of the participants and University of Mysore. Over to Professor Maruthi sir. Yes.
Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. First of all, let me extend my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Nanjun Swami sir for giving this opportunity to share a few thoughts on law of war. I am indeed privileged and honored to be a part of this program, which is actually being held online. The topic in which I have chosen for this program is on law of war. So in this perspective, the way in which this law has come through, so it has come through on the basis of human sufferings. Earlier, you know very well, earlier, the situations were widespread, especially during First and Second World War. Even much earlier, your entire Europe was actually battlefield. Entire Europe was battlefield. There was no scope for protection of your human rights, fundamental freedoms, and many. So such be the case, the way in which the law has come through shall also be looked into. Of course, much has been discussed on law of war. First of all, we have to understand what is law of war, what are its purposes and principles, through which you can understand why a law of war is relevant, why a law of war is important at this juncture. You know very well what is war. War is nothing but a contest between states. Contest between states. That definition is almost outdated. Now, war is not only a contest between states, but also individuals. Individuals are also accountable to war because they are the people who are actually fighting each other during war situation as such. It could be international armed conflict, internal armed conflict. I must share with you, being a student of public international law, your internal armed conflict is 100 times dangerous than international armed conflict. So this has to be looked upon, and you are answerable based on certain Geneva Conventions which were actually concluded with a view to regulate human behavior and states' behavior as well at the international level as such. So that's why this law has come through with many, many traditions, principles, and other agreements. Look at the purposes of laws, law of war. Of course, wars should be limited to achieving the political goals that started the war, that is territorial control as such, and should not include unnecessary destruction. You cannot destroy everything during war situation. It is totally restricted. I agree. Based on the Geneva Conventions and additional protocols 1977 were concerned. Why I am sharing law of war? there is a relevance. So as and when you deal with the peacekeeping operations all over the world, understanding law of war is actually relevant in the recent decades are concerned. What is war and what is peace? How will you understand a dichotomy between war and peace? Of course, much has been discussed on war and peace. I think nothing is left out to me to share a few thoughts on law of war. Look at one of the definitions given by Opening, who has actually contributed a lot to shape public international law. What he says, war is nothing but contest between states. Now, that definition is in fact outdated. War is not only a contest between states, but also individuals. Now, individuals have come in with a view to understand the war as such. You know very well, war is actually divided into two: internal armed conflict and international armed conflicts are concerned. When we talk on the law of war, obviously one has to understand the contribution made by Hugo Grotius, who was actually the father of public international law, wrote two main books. Number one, De Jure Belli Ac Pacis, it means war and peace, and another one is on Mare Liberum. These were the two books were actually written by Hugo Grotius, the father of public international law. De Jure Belli means war and peace. What is peace? Peace, it does not mean it is an absence of a war as such. I must share with you, peace means presence of justice. That has to be looked upon. See, as and when you deal with war, so then you are not supposed to be forgotten the rights of human beings all over the world, be it women, children, orphans, refugees, internally displaced persons, and many. And you cannot bombard on any places. Look at, you cannot bombard on even Mysore Palace. You cannot bombard on KRS. You cannot bombard on Taj Mahal. They are all cultural properties, shall not be bulldozed by anyone. This is what United Nations organization came out with a convention. You know, a convention on protection of cultural property during armed conflict 1954 came in. Since 1954, we have been actually emphasizing on the protection of cultural property during war situation as such. Earlier, what had happened when you had 30 years of war in Europe, almost you took 30 years to put an end war in Europe. You know very well, entire Europe was battlefield. There was no scope for protection of your rights and duties also. And all states were actually interested to wage war with their own neighboring countries. They wanted to capture, they wanted to damage every one of them. They wanted to kill every one of them. This is what, the religious war was actually highly impressive and expressive at the international level as such. So that's why, as and when you deal with many issues and challenges, so then you shall not be forgotten on the laws of war, how a war can be concluded, how war can be declared. There are certain rules and regulations. Those rules and regulations shall be known to you when you are actually dealing with the war as such or armed conflict. So that's why war should be brought to an end as quickly as possible. This is what guidelines are actually emphasizing. All Geneva Conventions, you know very well. See, before the coming into force of Geneva Conventions, especially 1864, there was a story. One has to understand it. A guy, a businessman, Henry Dunant, who was actually crossing a battle of Salferino, he saw some people sick and wounded. And in fact, he took them to nearest room and started giving first aid to them. One fine day, he sat with his own people and started writing a memory of a battle of Salferino. In his book, in fact, at the end of his book, he expressed to have some policies at the international level to regulate states' behavior. That's why Geneva Conventions on Law of War came in the 18th century. So this is what one has to understand when you are actually dealing with war as such. See, when you are actually emphasizing these two main approaches like peace and war, as I said, what is peace? Peace, it does not mean it is an absence of war. Peace means presence of justice. I mean to say, the fruits of justice should be shared to the people who are left out in the society as a whole. That is what this law has come in, isn't it? Perhaps you might have studied on constitutional law, international law, human rights law. Perhaps you may have gone through labor law or industrial law or something else. See, among these specific laws, law of war is one of the major concerns, shall also be looked upon. And moreover, if rather I would say, law of war is one of the branches of public international law. What is public international law? How, in what manner public international law shall be looked upon? These are the major observations we have when you are actually running with the law of war as such. Then you can put a fundamental question: what is public international law? Why public international law is helpful to understand the problems of the states all along. That's why we have to understand it. What is public international? Public international law is nothing but body of rules and principles which regulates members of international community as a whole. And you can put a fundamental question: who should be brought within the limits of public international law? You have states, lesser extent with individuals, non-state entities, and organizations should be brought within the limits of public international law as such. Since law of war is one of the branches of public international law, whatever you have emphasized, it could be based on international customs, general principles of law recognized by civilized nations, then international custom. All these would prevail over the subject as and when you deal with some disputes at the international level as such. How international disputes could be solved? There are two main observations as and when you deal with the international disputes are concerned. How international disputes can be solved: by way of peace, by way of war. These are the two main observations we have when you are actually deciding some international disputes at the international level as such. Number one is by way of a pacific settlement of disputes. Pacific settlement of disputes in the sense that peaceful settlement of disputes. You have mediation, good office, conciliation, arbitration, above all judicial settlements. Through judicial settlements, you are going to decide some cases at the international level as such. On the other hand, once you have failed in pacific settlement of disputes or peaceful settlement of disputes, states may be inviting some other mechanisms. It could be, sanctions. It could be propaganda for such war. It could be war of aggression. In any manner, look at your UN Charter 1945, wherein it has emphasized on protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms without distinction with the race, sex, language, and religion as such. This is what the preamble of UN Charter 1945 has already been outspoken. To understand humanity all over the world, when you are actually dealing with law of war, you are emphasizing on humanity, humanity shall be sustained. And you have to balance the interest between military necessity and the humanity. They should go hand in hand. Otherwise, it would be virtually impossible to live as human being when the wars are actually being held. It could be internal armed conflict and international armed conflicts are concerned. So that's why laws have come in and the principles have come in with a view to understand the war situation as such. It's a question of life. Please understand when you are actually dealing with the war as such. And moreover, people and property that do not contribute to the war effort should be protected against unnecessary destruction and hardship passage. Simply, you cannot go there and bombard on the place and come home happily. You have to be careful when you are actually running with the war as such. That's why one has to understand on the basis of justice. What is justice? You know very well. No one above the law, even king also under the law and God. Justice not only be done, it seems to be done. As I said, fruits of justice should be shared to the people who are left out in the society as a whole. They could be women, children, orphans during war situation as such. So that's why, as far as historians are concerned, there were more than 12,751 wars were occurred on this earth planet. They include 22 major wars, 6 internal armed conflicts. Especially during First and Second World War, there was no scope for protection of your rights and many other. It was a question of life. Kindly understand. When United States of America invaded Japan and killed every one of them, especially in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, August 6th and 9th, 1945. It was unexpected event which could occur, especially at the end of the Second World War. Since then, you have been talking something on the law of war and humanitarian law. What is humanitarian law? How, in what manner humanitarian law shall be looked upon during war situation as such? I have got my own equation when you deal with, humanitarian law. War plus human rights is equal to humanitarian law. War plus human rights is equal to international humanitarian law. See, observing human rights during war situation is one of the responsibilities on the part of a belligerent state. What is belligerent state? A state which has involved with war situation should be called as a belligerent state. A belligerent state should have some responsibilities for all human beings, irrespective of the fact that they may have come from a good background, little background, middle background, whatever it could be. It is one of the responsibilities on the part of a state to render justice to a common man as and when the war being actually held. So that is all about. And what are the principles of laws of war you have? Kindly have a look on. You have military necessity, the distinction, proportionality, humanity. Honor is a principle that demands a certain amount of fairness and mutual respect between adversaries. See, when the war has taken place, what is to be done? Sometimes it would be virtually impossible. Then how do you regulate the state's behavior? This is very, very important. So that's why the principles of laws of war have come in with humanitarian considerations. Look at military. Suppose you are working with an army. So perhaps your, what shall I say, superior might have given you an order to kill someone. You have to do. There is no other way to escape from the clutches of a military necessity as such. But law says when you are actually performing your duty, you should know humanity. This is to be called as the rule of proportionality as such. Of course, when you are actually bombarding on any place, distinction shall also be made available. Are you bombarding on militants? Are you bombarding on combatants? Combatant means the people who are actually involved during war situations should be called as combatants. Who are non-combatants? Non-combatants are nothing but civilians. They are all innocent people. You cannot kill innocent people during war situation as such. This is why this is what the humanity has come in. The concept of humanity has come in, and it's within you to understand the human sufferings during armed conflict as such. When the war is actually being held under such circumstances, you have to observe humanity. That is why the law of war was actually emphasized. And moreover, you know very well, when the war is actually being held, there shall be declaration. Without declaration, you have no moral right to have war situation as such. So that's why, see, lawful conduct of belligerent state actors shall also be looked into. That's very, very important. So without a declaration of war, how can you wage war with other neighboring countries? Practically is not possible, and law will never ever permit you. If at all you want to, obviously it would be called as if what shall I say, the violation of the principles of a war. It would be called as if war crime, as it has been overemphasized under Article 8 of Rome Statute 1998. Under Rome Statute 1998, this is what the war crime is actually defined. What is war crime? That is all about, isn't it? Whereas and when you deal with a war situation, obviously you shall not be committed any heinous crimes against humanity or genocide assets. So that's why international treaties have come in. These are the international treaties, laws we have. As and when you deal with war, obviously these conventions would prevail over the subject. Kindly understand, all states which are involved with war situation should observe all these international treaties. What are international treaties? This is what Article 2 of Vienna Convention on Law of Treaties 1969 has defined. What is international treaty? International treaty is nothing but an agreement between states formed accordingly. An agreement between states. Once you have signed on the record, and it is your duty to follow them. That is what the pact must be respected has come in, that the pacta sunt servanda has come in with a view to understand treaty as such. That's why with a view to define a treaty, kindly go through Article 2 of Vienna Convention on Law of Treaties 1969 as such. So that's why treaties are also sources of international law. If something has gone wrong, when you are actually deciding some of the cases in connection to war situation, obviously these treaties would prevail over the subject. Take for an example, you have Paris Declaration respecting maritime law, abolishing privateering, then Geneva Convention for amelioration of conditions of wounded, sick in armed forces. This is your responsibility to render justice even during armed conflict as such. Then St. Petersburg Declaration renouncing the use of explosive projectiles under 400 grams weight as such. You have to be careful when you are actually using some bombs. Look at some of the conventions have concluded with a view to prohibit chemical weapons, bacteriological weapons, microbacterial weapons, and many. And you should not use these weapons of mass destruction during war situation as such. Kindly have a look on, many scripts, especially in Hinduism, in which Arjuna he himself rejected to use weapons of mass destruction as such. That's there even in law of war as such. Look at 1874 project of an international declaration concerning the laws and customs of war. Those customs of war shall also be observed. Failing with that, it amounts to war crime, maybe genocide, maybe crimes against humanity, maybe crimes against peace. So this is what one has to understand. And look at even the 1880 Manual of Laws and Customs of War at Oxford, at its session in Geneva, 1874. The Institute of International Law appointed a committee to study Brussels Declaration of the same year and submit the institute its opinion supplementary proposal on the subject as such. See, as and when you deal with law of war, so then you shall not be forgotten all these specific legislations which are highly expressive at the international level as such. You have Hague Convention. Look at 1899 and 1907 you have. The 1909 London Declaration concerning the laws of naval war, largely reiterated existing laws. When you deal with law of war, so law of war is actually divided into three. Number one, aerial warfare, marine warfare, land warfare. These are the three main, kinds of war you have. Aerial warfare, naval warfare, then land warfare. So based on these distinctions, laws are divided into several species. When I deal with aerial warfare, obviously Paris Conventions would prevail over the subject, Montreal Protocols would prevail over the subject to clear the doubts in connection to aerial warfare as such. But land warfare, obviously all the Geneva Conventions in which India has already been signed on the record would prevail over the subject. See, apart from this, you have certain specific, covenants or agreements at the international level. Have a look on. You have 1928 Kellogg-Briand Pact, known as the Pact of Paris. You have then Geneva Convention relative to treatment of prisoners of war. When you are taken for hostile relations, you should treat them as if your own human being. That's why the Geneva Convention relative to treatment of prisoners of war came in 1929 as such. In the same year, in 1929, Geneva Convention on amelioration of the condition of wounded and sick was also established. Why these international covenants came in? They wanted to know the problems of human being during armed conflict as such. Earlier, what had happened? You are just sending, army people to wage war with your own neighboring countries. You did not document the sick and wounded, and you did not bother about sick and wounded during war situation as such. In some battles, once the battle was over, that entire place had to be called as a graveyard, and there was no scope for protection of human values or humanity, human rights or fundamental freedoms during war situation as such. So that's why like-minded people, especially at the international level, they sat together and decided to have some basic, legislations which would be helpful for all human beings, irrespective of the fact that. So that's why, even in 1930, Treaty for a Limitation and a Reduction of Naval Armament and came in. Then some pacts were also established. Look at London Naval Treaty, 1936 came in. Apart from this, you have a judgment of International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg, See, in this Nuremberg trial, in fact, Heichmann, who was actually best follower of, you know, Hitler, he killed many civilians during Second World War. With a view to escape from the clutches of law, he went to Italy. He stayed there. One fine day, he was actually abducted and produced before Nuremberg trial, because he killed many people, civilians, during the Second World War as such. That's why the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg established in 1946. In 1947, Nuremberg Principles formulated under United Nations General Assembly Resolution 177, 21st November 1947 as such. So that's why Geneva Conventions were established accordingly and formulated based on humanitarian perceptions that has to be looked into. And kindly have a look on the preamble of UN Charter 1945, wherein it has taught us to understand humanity all over the world. It starts with we the people of United Nations to save the succeeding generation from the scourge of war. And it has been urged that there shall be international cooperation and mutual coexistence with a view to promote and encourage fundamental freedoms and human rights without distinction with race, sex, language, and religion as such. That's why, half-century enactments of United Nations organization have come in with all humanitarian perceptions that has to be looked into. So soon after the establishment of, United Nations organization, look at in 1948, United Nations Convention on Prevention and Punishment of Crime of Genocide was actually established. What was the business? The business was to put an end to genocide, that the crime of genocide all over the world. And India is one of the member countries of this convention. So based on that, we deal with, genocide also. That has to be looked upon. And moreover, in 1949, Geneva Convention for amelioration of conditions of wounded and sick in armed forces in the field came in with all perceptions. That's why one has to understand even treatment of prisoners of war during war situation. How, in what manner the belligerent states should treat them as if their own human being. That's all about Geneva Convention related to treatment of prisoners of war, 1949 as. Especially in 1949, 4 main Geneva Conventions concluded with a view to understand human sufferings during armed conflict as such. In 1954, in fact, Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the event of armed conflict came in. What is cultural property? This is what Rabindranath Tagore has defined. Cultural property should have had aesthetic value. I mean, a love of art, like monuments, sculpture, art, and literature shall not be bulldozed during war situation. That's why in 1954, Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the event of armed conflict came in. It could be internal armed conflict and international armed conflict, whatever it could be. Earlier, what had happened before the coming into force of these international treaties, people were actually targeting others. They wanted to bulldoze even cultural property. Go to Hampe and all, Belur. You are witnessing how, neighboring countries were actually invaded on the cultural property as such. That's why with a view to understand the protection of cultural property in the event of armed conflict. In 1954, Geneva Convention was actually concluded. Geneva Convention was concluded. So that's why one should understand how, in what manner the laws of war have come in. See, apart from these earlier conventions, you have 1977 Geneva Protocol, the first, the additional Geneva Convention, 12th August 1949, which is actually dealing with the protection of victims of international armed conflict and such. And apart from these, you have Protocol second, you have Red Cross fundamental rules of international humanitarian law applicable in armed conflict as such. I must share with you, thanks to ICRC, International Committee of Red Cross, for actually understanding humanitarian law at the international level as such. So what kind of the international law you have when you are actually dealing with the law of war, that is very, very important from the point of view of understanding humanitarian perceptions are concerned. Without understanding these, it would be virtually impossible to live as a human being. You have these conventions, kindly have a look on. You have International Court of Justice advisory opinion on the legality of threat or use of nuclear weapons. It's totally prohibited. You have Ottawa Treaty, you have optional protocol, you have Geneva Protocol, third, all in all you have. Then you can have a look on types of war. So what kind of war situations you have, kindly have a look on. You know very well, in nutshell, as I have already been emphasized, based on the different kinds of the war as such. It could be aerial warfare, naval warfare, and land warfare as such. See, however, you might have actually gone through different kinds of the warfare. Have a look on these also. Take for an example, you have asymmetric warfare. Is a conflict between belligerents of drastically different levels of military capability or size as such. Asymmetric warfare you have. Who are all belligerent states? Belligerent states in the sense that states which are involved with war situation should be called as belligerent states. You have biological warfare or germ warfare. Is the use of weaponry, biological toxin or infectious agents such as bacteria, viruses, and fungi. On the basis of this, they use, biological warfare. When you are actually running with biological warfare, you should know humanity. This is what law says. Look at chemical warfare. Involves the use of weaponizing chemicals in the combat. This has happened especially in Syria. You know very well. In Syria, more than 1,500 people killed within 24 hours by using of a chemical weapon in Syria. That issue is actually ongoing even today. Though we have had as many as specific legislations at the international level, the human sufferings are actually going on. So that's what one has to understand, the types of war. Without understanding types of war, how can I understand certain international covenants which are highly expressive at the international level as such? So when you deal with the chemical warfare, obviously you are witnessing, a poisonous gas as a chemical weapon was actually principally used during the World War I, and resulted in over 1 million estimated casualty, including more than 1 lakh civilians. So 1 lakh civilians were actually targeted. It was because of a chemical warfare as such. Then cold warfare you have is an intense international rivalry without direct military conflict, but with a sustained threat of it, including high level of military preparations, then expenditures and development, and many involve active conflicts by indirect means such as economic warfare, political warfare, then espionage, cyber warfare, and proxy wars. So these are the major issues and challenges you are just witnessing, especially during Cold Warfare as such. Then conventional warfare you have. What does it mean? It's a declared war between states in which nuclear, biological, or chemical weapons are not used or sea limited deployment. When you're actually dealing with the conventional warfare, states have no moral right to use biological or chemical weapons. It is totally prohibited as per as public international law is concerned. When you deal with conventional warfare, you have no moral right to use all these weaponaries, nuclear weapons, biological weapons, or chemical weapons are concerned. You should not use them. It is totally prohibited. But some of them are using. So once you have gone through evidences, you can bring it to the notice of ICC. That's the International Criminal Court, in which it has got highest jurisdiction to try the war criminals. This is what the Rome Statute 1998 has already been outspoken. Sorry to bother, India is not one of the member countries of this Rome Statute 1998. We are anticipating to sign in future, not now. That's one of the major issues and challenges we have when you are actually dealing with the types of war circumstances. Apart from cold warfare, chemical warfare, biological warfare, asymmetric warfare, conventional warfare, you have cyber warfare, which involves the actions by a nation state or an international organization to attack and attempt to damage another nation's information systems are concerned. This is to be called as a cyber warfare. How not manner you are going to regulate cyber warfare, conventional warfare, cold warfare, chemical warfare, biological warfare, asymmetric warfare. So these are the things that shall also be looked upon when you deal with the war situation as such. See, information warfare is the application of destructive force on a large scale against information assets and systems, against the computers, networks that support the four critical infrastructure. Take for an example, power grid, communication, financial and transportation may be curtailed. See, when you deal with war, everything would be curtailed. This has to be looked upon. And we need to have some rules. Otherwise, how can you regulate? Look at rules which are highly expressive under the umbrella of the law of war as such. You cannot target the civilians. I mean to say innocent people shall not be killed during war situation as such. There won't be any torture or inhuman treatment of detainees. When you are taken some detainees, so those detainees shall not be tortured and inhumanly treated. Please understand. And you cannot attack on hospitals and aid workers. Take for an example. See, during war situation, your ICRC people, that's the International Committee of Red Cross, may be helpful, okay, to understand in human sufferings. See, some of the non-governmental organizations are also helpful during armed conflict, and you cannot attack these people. So that's why, hospitals and aid workers shall also be protected during war situation as such. It is one of the responsibilities on the part of belligerent states who are involved with war situation should provide safe passage for civilians to flee. When you are given, high security should be maintained, and you shall not bombard on them. You shall not destroy their properties. You have no moral right during war situation as well. This is what law says. And this is one of the responsibilities on the part of you to provide access to humanitarian organizations. You have had more than 17 specialized agencies of United Nations organization. Why United Nations organization was actually initiated? It was initiated to restore or maintain international peace and security. We need peace in the world because we have already got bad experiences, especially in the First and Second World War. As I said, your entire Europe was actually battlefield. To overcome 30 years of war in Europe, you established Treaty of Westphalia in 1648. Why Treaty of Westphalia was actually concluded between states? They wanted to put an end to war. They wanted to rationalize war. They wanted to end a war, that to religious war. You know very well, earlier what had happened? Religion was supreme, temple was supreme, mosque was supreme, king was supreme. Whatever he wanted to say was the law of the land. There was no scope for protection of your own rights. So that's why, you know very well, some of the obnoxious ideologies of these states. King can do no wrong is a wrong. I agree. Sun never sets on the British flag. It is an obnoxious ideologies of UK. Please understand. Isn't it? When you have established some observations at the international level, you have to understand peace. We need peace. We don't want war. Peace, it does not mean it is an absence of war. Peace means presence of justice. You have to give voice to the voiceless, and you have to share fruits of justice. Fruits of justice should be shared to the people who are left out in the society as a whole. This has happened especially in Cold War and Iran-Iraq massacres, and the situations between, bad situations between South Korea and North Korea, then ongoing crisis especially in Libya, Syria, ongoing crisis in Yemen, ongoing crisis between India and Pakistan. You are witnessing why Kargil war took place. What was the reason why Kargil war took place? So that has to be looked into. When the war is actually going on, you should know how to protect, promote, and encourage human values. That is very, very important. This has happened especially in the Iraq war, when there was actually Iraq war. American army people, they gang raped Iraqi women at late night. This has happened. So usually during war situation, women are going to be targeted. Children are also targeted, and more or less the entire civilians are going to be targeted. So that's my concern, to share a few thoughts here. See, my observation is very, very simple. As and when you deal with war, so then you shall not be forgotten on basic principles of law. So without understanding basic principles of law on law of war or war, how can you understand the war? That's why with a view to understand these, I have come across with some basic legislations which would be helpful for sustaining humanity during war situation as such. That's why you have to understand the humanitarian perceptions during war situation as such. And moreover, it is intended to mitigate the hardship of war by, isn't it? By protecting both combatants and non-combatants from unnecessary sufferings. During war situation, combatants can be killed, can be targeted by anyone, but you cannot target Combatants. Combatants means what? What do you mean by combatant? Combatants mean, the people who are involved during war situations should be called as if combatants. Non-combatants means civilians. You cannot target them. This is what all Geneva Conventions are addressing at the international level. You shall not target innocent people. You shall not target, civilians. Put it in a proper way, non-combatants. You can kill combatants based on your military necessity, but you cannot kill, you cannot target non-combatants. I mean to say that, civilians shall not be targeted during war situation. And the law is also safeguarding certain fundamental human rights of persons who fall into the hands of enemy, particularly prisoners of war and wounded and sick, children, above all, civilians. I mean to say the innocent people shall not be targeted. And law is also facilitating the restoration of peace. Why law of war established? The law of war actually established to restore peace in the world. What is peace? Presence of justice. That's very, very important. See, as and when you deal with the law of war, so then you shall not be forgotten on IHL. IHL means International Humanitarian Law. What is International Humanitarian Law? Why International Humanitarian Law has come in? In International Human Rights Law, you have bundle of rights. Whereas in case of International Humanitarian Law, lots of actually obligations are shouldered on the belligerent states during war situation as such. I must share with you, if somebody is actually crying at home, that the mother should know. If somebody is actually crying at home, that the mother should know why he is actually crying. This is very, very important. And moreover, you should know Kriya and Karma. Kriya and Karma should go hand in hand when you deal with IHL, International Humanitarian Law as such. Obviously, you can put a fundamental question. What is International Humanitarian Law? I have come across this slide. Kindly have a look on. What is humanitarian law? It is a set of rules which seeks for humanitarian reasons to limit the effects of armed conflict. It reduces, human sufferings during armed conflict as such. International humanitarian law is a branch of international law that applies to situations of armed conflict as such. It is applicable during armed conflict alone. That's why it is to be called as a international humanitarian law as such. What is the purpose of this law? It has had its own perceptions to reduce the unnecessary sufferings, losses, and damage in time of armed conflict. And it safeguards the fundamental human rights and dignity of persons during armed conflict, during war situation access. And it facilitates the restoration of peace. Restoration of peace is one of the responsibilities on the part of this subject as such. I mean, international humanitarian law as such. When does IHL apply? That's very, very important. Under what circumstances international humanitarian law is answerable? During the situation of international armed conflict, during the situation of internal armed conflict. This has happened especially in neighboring country, Sri Lanka. In 2009, internal armed conflict was actually put an end by killing Prabhakaran. You know very well. We had internal armed conflict even in Sri Lanka also. That's why when there was actually internal armed conflict in Sri Lanka, many people, they were actually migrated to other parts of the world to lead their life. That's why I must share with you, your internal armed conflict is 100 times dangerous than international armed conflict. So that's why we need to have some policies at the international level. We need to have some international covenants at the international level. Otherwise, how can you regulate the state's behavior? How can you regulate states when they are actually, targeting each other during war situation as such? So that's why this law is actually answerable. Look at, to whom does IHL apply? IHL recognizes two categories of persons in armed conflict. Number one, combatants. You can kill them based on your military necessity, but you cannot kill civilians. Civilians are highly protected during armed conflict. This is what law says. When you deal with combatants, combatants means the people who are involved with war situation, who are involved with war, should be called as if combatants. They can be killed. See, combatants have the right to participate directly in hostile relations. They have got all rights because they have been actually appointed by the government. They can be targeted based on then the military necessity as such. But you cannot target civilians. Civilians are highly protected. I mean, innocent people are highly protected. See, civilians have the general right to protection against the effects of hostilities, but cannot participate in hostilities. And they cannot take part in hostilities. It is totally prohibited as per as Geneva Conventions 1949 and Additional Protocol 1977 as such. In 1977, two main additional protocols were concluded, which were actually answerable to Geneva Conventions 1949 as such. So that's why. So based on these factors, it has got its own fundamental rules. Kindly have a look on. See, your law, I mean, the international humanitarian law is actually ensuring human treatment of persons not taking part in hostile relations and do not kill and injure protected person. You cannot kill these people, and collect and care for wounded and sick. During war situation, what is to be done? If something has gone wrong during war situation, suppose as many as people were actually targeted, they were actually wounded and sick, they should be documented. They should be given an opportunity to access, medical treatment as such. This is what law says. And you have to respect the lives and dignity of captured combatants and civilians are concerned. That's very, very important. And respect fundamental judicial guarantees during trials and proceeding. When you are actually prosecuting them, you have to prosecute them according to fair trial. Fair trial, that itself is one of the fundamental rights and human rights as well. That has to be looked upon. Otherwise, how can I understand the fair trial or proceedings when you are actually running with war crime, genocide, crimes against humanity, and crimes against peace as such. Peace as such. That's why. Then the choice of means and methods of warfare is unlimited. You cannot have choice, isn't it? Distinguish between combatants and civilians at all circumstances. When you are actually bombarding, when you are targeting, when you are launching some bombs on these, obviously you should be careful, and you have to make such a kind of distinction between combatants and civilians. Who are all innocent people, who are all combatants, should be distinguished during armed conflict or during war situation as such. Attack only military objectives. You can only attack on military objectives. You cannot attack on, reservoirs. You cannot attack on cultural property. You cannot attack on hospitals. You cannot attack on educational institutions. It is totally prohibited. You cannot attack on refugee camps, internally displaced persons camp, or dams and such other things. It is totally prohibited. You can only attack military objectives, not the people where the civilians are highly protected. This is what you have to understand fundamental rules of international humanitarian law as such. This has happened in many places around the globe. It's totally inhuman. It is against to human rights and fundamental freedoms are concerned. There shall be minimum standards shall also be looked upon. Kindly have a look on. Prisoners of war, internees or detainees may be questioned. They may be willing to freely give important information or may be induced. And moreover, it is prohibited to use any of the following techniques in order to obtain information. When you are actually obtaining information from your own enemy, you should not practice these. There shall not be in any manner of torture, degrading treatment such as leaving prisoners of war naked. This has happened especially in Iraq war. American army people, they got information, by asking, by using, inhuman methods to few, women in Iraq as such. And inhuman interrogation methods should be prohibited. Threat of violence and death shall also be prohibited. Threat to other persons shall also be prohibited. Refusal to treat wounds and provide medical treatment. Sometimes, you may not be able to give such a kind of opportunity to these. It's totally prohibited, and you have to give an opportunity to these, wounds, and you have to give an opportunity to the people who are actually wounded and sick during war situation as well. And administering chemicals, drugs, and other substances are also highly prohibited during war situation as such. One has to understand. Sometimes this has happened in Iraq war. American army people wanted to get some information from him, isn't it? He was actually detained, and by showing, dog, they were actually getting first-hand information from a detainee. It was highly inhuman. One shall not be used during armed conflict as such, war situation as such. This has happened even by giving electric, circuits, and you may get, first-hand information where exactly you have kept arms and ammunition, where exactly you have, you have kept some, information to target, enemy. All these may be used during war situation. However, what law says, it is actually totally prohibited. This has happened especially in the Iraq war. I'm very sorry to share this video. This has happened especially in Iraq war as such. It was highly inhuman. These army people were actually getting first-hand information from her. It is totally prohibited and inhuman also, and law will never ever permit. Your consciousness will never ever permit. Your humanity will never ever permit. One has to understand these issues and challenges are concerned. The international criminal responsibility has come in. Why international criminal responsibility has come in? That is all about the Geneva Conventions 1949. When there is actually universal jurisdiction for breaches, obligation to try breaches, then cooperation in inquiries, all these Geneva Conventions visa applicable as such. Nuremberg trial is one of the examples, as and when you deal with what shall I say, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocide as such. In 1993 and 1994, International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia and International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda were actually constituted with a view to punish the people who are responsible for war crime as such. Why I'm showing all these? before the coming into force of Rome Statute 1998, or before the establishment of ICC, that's International Criminal Court, we did not find international criminal law at the international level. International criminal law was very silent to address these issues, and there was no scope for prosecution of the criminals who were responsible for genocide, crimes against humanity, war crime, and above all, crimes against peace. That's why ICTY and ICTR were actually established to prosecute the people who were responsible for mass killing of the people around the global assets. Look at International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia. This statute has emphasized on these factors: willful killing, torture, or inhuman treatment, including biological experiments, and willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health. All these, crimes were actually included in this. Then you can understand commander responsibility and superior responsibility. So it is restricted during war situation as well. Being a commander, you cannot command everything simply. Based on your power, you cannot command everything. You should know humanity. While you are actually commanding your own, subordinate officials, you should be careful. That's why commander responsibility and superior orders have come in. Look at, commander is responsible if he commits or orders the commission of the war crime as such. If he fails to take all possible steps to prevent and punish war crime, under such circumstances, commander is held responsible. So you cannot command directly. You go and kill some civilians or innocent people or children or orphans or women are concerned. You should be careful when you are actually commanding to subordinates officials are concerned. That's why law has come in. Your law of war has come out with as many as the basic principles that has to be looked upon. Otherwise, it would be virtually impossible to live as a human being during a war situation as such. See, how in what manner international humanitarian law can be implemented. That's why. How can you implement international humanitarian law? First of all, you have to understand, respect for, Red Cross emblems. When the war is actually being held, under such circumstances, you have to have a look on Red Cross emblems. When you see Red Cross, you have to gun down. You shall not bombard on these people who are actually helpful during war situations. And a dissemination of Geneva Convention. This is the right time to teach law of war to army people. You have to teach law of war to army people so that they can understand how, in what manner a war can be concluded, war can be put in it, war can be rationalized, war can be regularized, and how, in what manner you are going to punish the people who are responsible for gross violation of Geneva Conventions and additional protocols 1977 as concerned. And you have to enact some penal legislations. In India, we don't find as many as legislations which are addressing the law of war as such. But we are actually relying on the Geneva Conventions. So what I would like to share with you, you have to have some specific legislations even at the national level, so that you can understand what is the law of war and how, in what manner you are going to teach your army people. And orders and instructions to ensure observance shall also be given time and again, and the duty of commander shall also be looked upon. This is what additional protocol 1 article 87 is actually outspoken on duty of commanders. And mutual assistance in criminal matters shall also be looked upon. There shall be cooperation and mutual coexistence between states to prosecute these criminals accordingly. This is what Additional Protocol 1, Article 88 of the Geneva protocols are actually emphasizing. So there are some challenges when you are actually implementing law of war or international humanitarian law. Weak record of ratification of international treaties is there. Simply, these states will go there, sign the international covenants, and they will never ever go for ratification. This is what your Vienna Convention on Law of Treaties 1969 has already been directed you. Once you have become one of the member countries of any convention, any treaty, it is your duty to ratify at the municipal level. This has not been done so far. Of course, this is one of the challenging issues when you are actually implementing international humanitarian law at the municipal level as such. And lack of national implementing legislations are there. Especially in India, we don't find some specific legislations which are addressing law of war as such, and lack of awareness and understanding by authority as such. So what I would like to share with you, there shall be some international convention to be disseminated to these people in the sense that who will be actually waging war with other nations should be taught law of war, and they should be given an opportunity to learn what is law of war, what is international humanitarian law, what is human right. That's through which you can disseminate, through which you can have some awareness programs. There shall be some international conferences, seminars, symposiums, and above all the workshops to address these issues at the international level as well. Otherwise it would be virtually impossible. Look at different legal systems. Article 253 of the Constitution of India, which talks about incorporation of international human rights law into the municipal law, but nothing has been done so far till now, except the Human Rights Act 1993. We don't find other legislations which are actually addressing some of the issues and challenges of the war or the humanitarian law as such. So that's one of the observations we have. This has happened especially even in Iraq war and in some places. So these are the fundamental rules. Kindly have a look on. And as I've already been stated, on the basis of Additional Protocol 1, Article 52, which has outspoken on the prohibition to deliberate attack on the civilian population as such. You have no moral right to attack on civilian population as such. Once you have seen ICRC people, you shall not bombard on the ICRC. That's the International Committee of Red Cross as such. It is because of efforts made by ICRC people, we are sitting here to understand international humanitarian law. Otherwise, we would not have tried to understand international humanitarian law as such. Thanks to ICRC people, International Committee of Red Cross, with a view to disseminate such kind of Geneva conventions at the international level as such. And medical service shall also be respected during war situation. You cannot bombard on, what shall I say, medical shops or hospitals or the people who have come to give you, first aid during war situation shall not be bulldozed. See, there is a common misconception prevailed in connection to ICRC. That's the International Committee of Red Cross. What the ICRC is not. See, look at, some say it is a United Nations organization. Being a student of law, I can say it's not at all United Nations organization or NGO, non-governmental organization. International Committee of Red Cross is a private and independent organization with headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland. With the help of few countries, it is actually helping every one of them. That has to be looked upon. So as and when you deal with international humanitarian law, so that you shall not be forgotten on cultural property. See, cultural property shall not be bombarded, and you cannot bombard even on Taj Mahal, and you cannot bombard on refugee camps, isn't it? So how do you make a distinction between combatants and non-combatants? Whether camels, which are actually carrying arms and ammunition, should be called as if combatants, whether combatants are also involved with war situation. That's why distinction during war situation is not so simple, but it requires a lot of dissemination of knowledge shall also be made. Dissemination of Geneva Convention shall also be made, through which you can understand the dichotomy between civilians or the combatants are concerned. In these decades, in fact, some of the states are involved with child soldiers. Instead of just giving pen to these people, you are giving rifles to wage war with neighboring countries. It is actually inhuman. It is against to CRC, Convention on Rights of Child in 1989, should be prosecuted before ICC. That's the International Criminal Court as such. Sorry to say, we have had more than 3 lakh, child soldiers all over the world who were actually recruited by, including, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Myanmar as well. These are the things we have. And moreover, if rather I would say, as it has been overemphasized under Article 18 of Rome Statute 1998, it is prohibited, isn't it? Prohibited to use children who are members of armed forces to take a direct part in hostile relations, and compulsory recruit children into armed forces is also prohibited. Recruit children into armed groups are also prohibited. In practical scenario, some of the states are actually involved with these crimes against humanity as such. That has to be looked upon. So with these few observations, I wanted to share a few thoughts on what is war, what are the principles of war, what are the rules of international humanitarian law we have had, and how, in what manner ICRC people, that's the International Committee of Red Cross, they are actually helpful to restore peace during war situation. So as you already been understood, and I have already been spoken, based on some statistics given by historians, there were more than 12,751 wars had occurred in this Earth planet, and moreover, they include First and Second World War as such. So that's why when you deal with war, it does not mean absence of peace as such. In a silver linings, peace, it does not mean it is an absence of war as such. Peace means presence of justice. That's why the fruits of justice should be shared to the people who are left out during war situation. And moreover, you have to give voice to the voiceless during war situation. With these few observations, I thank Professor Nanjadu Swami sir for giving this opportunity to share few thoughts on law of war during this program, which is actually being held online. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Thank you very much. Yeah. Questions? If you have some questions, you are liberal.
Sir, good evening, sir.
A very good evening.
Jai Prasad here.
Yeah.
Sir, you said that Geneva Convention happening in 1949.
Yeah.
But in my observation, there is any difference between the Geneva Convention and the Geneva Protocol, sir?
No, you see, when you deal with conventions and protocols, they are actually one and the same. When the 4th main Geneva Conventions concluded in 1949, obviously, when you deal with some specific legislations, you find deficiency. So with a view to fill the gaps, that's why in 1977 two main additional protocols were concluded. They were actually supporting the 4 Geneva Conventions concluded in 1949 as such, one and the same. But as far as additional protocols are concerned, they deal with internal armed conflicts also, internal armed conflicts. All these Geneva Conventions which were concluded in 1949 were in fact dealing with the international armed conflict. So that distinction you would be finding between Geneva Conventions concluded in 1949 and two main additional protocols emphasized in 1977 as 77 assets. And moreover, if rather I would say, kindly have a look on Article 2 of Vienna Convention on Law of Treaties 1969, wherein they have outspoken on treaty. What is treaty? Treaty is nothing but an agreement between states, formally written. So that's why. See, when you deal with international law, the international law has come through on the basis of as many as agreements between states. Look at, you have conventions, treaties. Treaties can be bilateral or multilateral. Treaties can be protocols. Treaties can be, multilateral party system as such. So that is all about distinguishing characteristics between conventions, treaties, protocols, final acts, and mutual, letters should be, shared between two nations shall be there. So that's why when you talk on Vienna Convention on Law of Treaties 1969, there are two things that shall be clear. One is, treaty contracts and lawmaking treaties. Your Geneva Conventions are lawmaking treaties. Please understand. Additional protocols are actually treaty contracts. That's one of the distinctions you will be expecting between Geneva Conventions 1949 and additional protocols, 1977 as such. And moreover, if rather I would say, whatever you have raised a question on these two main observations, I agree. The way in which additional protocols were established. Additional protocols were established to supplement the Geneva Conventions 1949 as such. They are one and the same. In 1949, you spoke on international armed conflict, whereas additional protocols 1977, they are outspoken on internal armed conflicts are concerned. Internal armed conflicts are concerned. That's one of the major distinctions you would be expecting between 1949 and 1977 protocols are concerned. I must share with you all these protocols established in 1977 should be supplementary, residuary, and complementary to the Geneva Conventions 1949 as such. They are in fact one and the same. They are actually regulating the behavior of states during armed conflict as such. All belligerent states should follow these minimum observations. Otherwise, it would be virtually impossible to understand the law of war as such or international humanitarian law as such. That's why, thanks to ICRC people, International Committee of Red Cross, for bringing certain international covenants to understand the human sufferings during war situation as such. That's why peace should be remained during war situation. With a view to understand peace in the world, and the law of war was actually coined accordingly. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Sir. Sir.
Yeah.
ಈಗ ಅನೇಕ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಒಪ್ಪಂದಗಳನ್ನ ಈಗ ಪ್ಯಾರಿಸ್ ಒಪ್ಪಂದ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ಜಿನಿವಾ ಒಪ್ಪಂದಗಳಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ಇದು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಈ ಕೋಲ್ಡ್ ವಾರ್ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ತಮ್ಮ ತಮ್ಮ ಸ್ವಹಿತಾಸಕ್ತಿಗೋಸ್ಕರವಾಗಿ ಈ ಅನೇಕ ಕೆಲವು ಪ್ರಾದೇಶಿಕ ಸಂಘಟನೆಗಳ ಅಥವಾ ಮಿಲಿಟರಿ ಒಕ್ಕೂಟಗಳನ್ನ ಸ್ಥಾಪನೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದಾರಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಮುಂದೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಭವಿಷ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಭಾವ ಬೀರ್ಬೋದು ಒಂಚೂರು?
ಅಲ್ಲ, ಹೌದು, ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದು ಕರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ಟೈಮ್ ಸಾಕಾಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಈಗ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಈಗ ನಿಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಬೋಕೋ ಹರಾಮ ಇದೆ, ISIL ಇದೆ, ISI ಇದೆ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ತಾಲಿಬಾನ್ ಇದೆ, ಅಲ್ ಖಾಯಿದಾ ಇದೆ. ಇವೆಲ್ಲ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ಡ್ ಕ್ರಿಮಿನಲ್ಸ್ಗಳು, ರಿಲಿಜಿಯಸ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ಸ್ಗಳು ನೀವು ಹೇಳಿದ ಪ್ರಕಾರ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನಾಯ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಈಗ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಹಿಸ್ಟ್ರಿ ಇದೆ. 1864ಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮುಂಚೆ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ್ದು ಕಾನೂನು ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ರಾಜರು ಅವ್ರವ್ರ ಪಾಡಿಗೆ ಆಳ್ವಿಕೆ ನಡೆಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಸತ್ತೋದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟೇ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಟ್ರೀಟ್ಮೆಂಟೇ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಒಂದ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬ್ಯಾಟ್ಲ್ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂಥರ ಸ್ಮಶಾನ ಕಣ್ಣ ಕಾಣೋದದು, ಆ ಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇತ್ತು. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಈ ಹೆನ್ರಿ ಡುನಾಂಟ್ ಅನ್ನೋರು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅಂತ, ಅವ್ರೊಬ್ಬ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಮ್ಯಾನ್ ಪಾಪ. ಅವರು ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಯಾವ್ದೋ ಒಂದು ವಾರ್ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂತ ಹೋದಾಗ ಬ್ಯಾಟಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಯಾಲ್ಫರಿನೋ ಅಂತ, ಅವಾಗ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂತ ಸಿಕ್ ಅಂಡ್ ವುಂಡೆಡ್ ಯಾರು ಬ್ಲೀಡಿಂಗ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಿ ಒಂದು ರೂಮಿಗೆ ಟ್ರೀಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಟ್ರೀಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಆಮೇಲೆ ಒಂದು ಬುಕ್ ಬರೀತಾರೆ, ಏನು ಅಂತ, ಮೆಮೊರಿ ಆಫ್ ಬ್ಯಾಟಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಸ್ಯಾಲ್ಫರಿನೋ ಅಂತ. ಆ ಬುಕ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ಲೀನ್ ಆಗಿ ಬರ್ದಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಏನು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ವಾರ್ ಆಗುವಾಗ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಟೈಮಲ್ಲಿ ಸೈನಿಕರಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಒಂದು ಈಗ ಹ್ಯುಮ್ಯಾನಿಟರಿ ಪರ್ಸೆಪ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ತೋರ್ಸ್ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತದೆ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ರಾಜ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದ, ಕಳಿಸಿ ಬರ್ತಿದ್ದ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಸತ್ರು ಅಂತ ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟೇಶನ್ ನಾವು ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಯಾವ ವೆಪನ್ ಅನ್ನು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಗೊತ್ತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ ನಮಗೆ. ಈಗ ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ವಾರ್ ಬಂದಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಈಗ ಕೆಮಿಕಲ್ ವೆಪನ್ಸ್, ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಟೀರಿಯಲಾಜಿಕಲ್ ವೆಪನ್ಸ್ಗಳು, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮೈಕ್ರೋ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಟೀರಿಯಲಾಜಿಕಲ್ ವೆಪನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ತುಂಬಾ ಕೆಟ್ಟದಾಗೆ ನಾವು ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ಅಂತ ವೆಪನ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡಬಾರ್ದು ಅನ್ನೋದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಈಗ ಇದು ಲಾ ಆಫ್ ವಾರ್ ಅಂತ ಬಂತು, ಕಾನೂನು. ಈಗ ಕಾನೂನು ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ನೀವು ಮಾಡಕ್ಕಾಗತ್ತೆ ಹೇಳಿ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಈಗ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾನೂನೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಮ್ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಯುದ್ಧಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಂತ ಕಾನೂನಿಲ್ಲ, ಬಟ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಮಿಲಿಟರಿಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟಂತ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಮ್ಯಾನ್ಯುವಲ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದೀವಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ, ಈಗ ಕಾರ್ಗಿಲ್ ವಾರ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಈ ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಇದು ನಮ್ಮ ಪಕ್ಕದಲ್ಲೇ ಇದು ಶ್ರೀಲಂಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ 2009 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ಶ್ರೀಲಂಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಟರ್ನಲ್ ಆರ್ಮ್ ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಎಂಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿ ಬೈ ಕಿಲ್ಲಿಂಗ್ ಪ್ರಭಾಕರನ್, ಹೌದಲ್ವಾ? ಈಗ ಆನ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಸಿರಿಯಾದಲ್ಲೂ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅದ್ರ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಯೆಮೆನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗೆ ಇಂಟರ್ನಲ್ ಆರ್ಮ್ ಕಾನ್ಫ್ಲಿಕ್ಟ್ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಜನನ್ನ ನೀವು ಕಿಲ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀರಿ. ಅದನ್ನ ಹೇಗೆ ಮಾಡೋದು? ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಮಿನಿಮಮ್ ಪ್ರೊಸೀಜರ್ ಅನ್ನ ನಾವು ಫಾಲೋ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ. ಯಾಕೆಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಈಗ ಒಬ್ಬ ಸ್ಟೇಟಿಗೆ ನೀವು ಪನಿಷ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೊಡಕ್ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅಲ್ಲಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂತ ಯಾವ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಇದನ್ನಲ್ಲ ಆತನಿಗೆ ಪನಿಷ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತದೆ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಟೈಮ್. ಯಾಕೆಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಆತನೇ ತಾನೇ ಮಾಡಿರೋದು. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಇಂಡಿವಿಜುವಲ್ ಕ್ರಿಮಿನಲ್ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿಗೆ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ನಾವು ಒತ್ತು ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ಈಗ. ಯಾಕೆಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಹಿಂದೆ ಏನಾಗಿತ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗೆ ಹೈಕ್ಮೆನ್, ನಾನು ಅವಾಗ್ಲೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೆ, ಹೈಕ್ಮೆನ್ ಅವನು ಇದು ಹಿಟ್ಲರ್ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ವರ್ಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದ. ತುಂಬಾ ಜನನ ಕೊಲೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಅವನು. ಯಾವಾಗ? ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ವಾರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸಿವಿಲಿಯನ್ಸ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಟಾರ್ಗೆಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. ಅದ ಮಾಡಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ವಾರ್ ಎಂಡ್ ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಎಲ್ಲರನ್ನು ಹಿಡಿಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಕೈದಿಗಳನ್ನ. ಅವಾಗ ಅವನು ಇಟಲಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಉಳ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾನೆ. ಉಳ್ಕೊಂಡಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಅಬ್ಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅವನಿಗೆ ನೂರೆಂಬರ್ ಟ್ರೈಲ್ ಎದುರಿಗೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವನು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ, ಇಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಹಾಗೆ ಹೀಗೆ ನನ್ನ ಸುಪೀರಿಯರ್ ಹೇಳಿದ ಆಗೋಸ್ಕರ ನಾನು ಮಾಡಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಸುಪೀರಿಯರ್ ಹೇಳಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಆದ್ರೆ ವೆನ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಪರ್ಫಾರ್ಮಿಂಗ್ ಯುವರ್ ಡ್ಯೂಟಿ ಯು ಶುಡ್ ನೋ ಹ್ಯುಮ್ಯಾನಿಟಿ ಅಂತ. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ಮಿಲಿಟರಿ ನೆಸೆಸಿಟಿ ಸಿಕ್ಕ ತಕ್ಷಣ ನೀವು ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು, ಯು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಎ ರೈಟ್ ಟು ಕಿಲ್. ಆದ್ರೆ ವೆನ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಪರ್ಫಾರ್ಮಿಂಗ್ ಯುವರ್ ಡ್ಯೂಟಿ ಯು ಶುಡ್ ನೋ ಹ್ಯುಮ್ಯಾನಿಟಿ ಅಂತ. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರನೇ ರೂಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರಪೋರ್ಷನಾಲಿಟಿಯನ್ನ ರೋಮ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಚ್ಯೂಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ 1998 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂತು. ರೋಮ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಚ್ಯೂಟ್ 1998 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಾಗಿಂದ ನಾವು ಈ ಕಾನೂನನ್ನ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಒತ್ತು ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಈ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ಡ್ ಗ್ರೂಪ್ಸ್ ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಇದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ನೀವು ಈಗ ICC ಏನು ಇಂಟರ್ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಕ್ರಿಮಿನಲ್ ಕೋರ್ಟ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಅದ್ರ ಮುಂದೆ ತರಬಹುದು. ಏನಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಈಗ ಜಿನೋಸೈಡ್, ಕ್ರೈಮ್ಸ್ ಅಗೇನ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಹ್ಯುಮ್ಯಾನಿಟಿ, ವಾರ್ ಕ್ರೈಮ್ಸ್, ಕ್ರೈಮ್ಸ್ ಅಗೇನ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಪೀಸ್ ಇದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಅಂತ ಕೇಸಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ICC ಎದುರಿಗೆ ತರಬಹುದು. 2002ರಿಂದ ಎಸ್ಟಾಬ್ಲಿಷ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅದು. ಅದ್ರ ಮುಂದೆ ನೀವು ತರಬಹುದು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಲ್ ಜ್ಯೂರಿಸ್ಡಿಕ್ಷನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದೀವಿ. ಯೂನಿವರ್ಸಲ್ ಜ್ಯೂರಿಸ್ಡಿಕ್ಷನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದೀವಿ. ಸುಮಾರು ಜನನ ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ನಾವು ಇಂಟ್ರಾಗೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ ICC ಎದುರುಗಡೆಗೆ. ನಿಮಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಕಾನೂನುಗಳು ತುಂಬಾ ಸರಳವಾಗಿದ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಇವ್ರಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ರಿಲ್ಯಾಕ್ಸೇಷನ್ ಸಿಕ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಅವರು ಏನ್ ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಉದಾಹರಣೆಗೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿರ್ದಂಗೆ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸ್ಡ್ ಕ್ರಿಮಿನಲ್ಸ್ ಗಳು ಆಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಕೆಲವರು ಅಲ್-ಕಾಯಿದಾ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ತಾಲಿಬಾನ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ISI, ಬೋಕೋ ಹರಾಮ ಅಂತ. ನೀವು ಬೋಕೋ ಹರಾಮ ಈ ಆಫ್ರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿದೆ, ಯೂಸುಫ್ ಅಲಿ ಎಸ್ಟಾಬ್ಲಿಷ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದದು ಬೋಕೋ ಹರಾಮ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾ? ಅಪೋಸ್ ಟು ವೆಸ್ಟರ್ನ್ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದವರು. ದೇ ವಾಂಟೆಡ್ ಟು ಟಾರ್ಗೆಟ್ ವೆಸ್ಟರ್ನೈಸೇಷನ್ by boosting easternization. So these are the two main distinctions you would be expecting between easternization and westernization as such. ನಿಮಗೆ 30 years of war ನಡೀತಲ್ಲ ಯುರೋಪದಲ್ಲಿ, ಅದು ರಿಲಿಜಿಯಸ್ ವಾರ್. ಅದು we took almost 30 years. ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರನ ಆ ವಾರನ್ನ ಎಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಈಗ ಯಾವತ್ತು ಈಗ 1648 ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಟ್ರೀಟಿ ಆಫ್ ವೆಸ್ಟ್ಫೇಲಿಯಾ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಪೀಸ್ ಟ್ರೀಟಿ ತಂದಿವಿ ನಾವು ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ. ನೀವ್ ಹೇಳಿದಾಗ ಈಗ ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಪೀಸ್ ಟ್ರೀಟೀಸ್ ಕೆಲಾಗ್ ಬಿಯಾಂಡ್ ಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಟ್ರೀಟಿ ಆಫ್ ವರ್ಸೈಲ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಲೀಗ್ ಆಫ್ ನೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಈಗ ಯುನೈಟೆಡ್ ನೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ತಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ದಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಇಸ್ ಅನ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ನೀವು ಇಂಟರ್ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಅದು ಟು ರಿಸ್ಟೋರ್ ಪೀಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಸೆಕ್ಯೂರಿಟಿ ಇನ್ ದ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್. ನೀವು ಯುನೈಟೆಡ್ ನೇಷನ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಅನ್ನ ನೀವು ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಹೌ ಇನ್ ವಾಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾನರ್ ಪೀಸ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಬಿ ರಿಸ್ಟೋರ್ಡ್ ಡ್ಯೂರಿಂಗ್ ವಾರ್ ಸಿಚುಯೇಷನ್ ಅಂತ. ಅಂಡ್ ಮೋರ್ ಓವರ್ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ವಾರ್ ಈಸ್ ನೋವೇರ್ ಡಿಫೈನ್ಡ್ ಅಂಡರ್ UN ಚಾರ್ಟರ್ 1945. ಎಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ವಾರ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಾವು ಹೇಳೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಗ್ರೆಷನ್ ಆಫ್ ವಾರ್ ಅಂತ ಮಾತ್ರ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ವಾರ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಗ್ರೆಷನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. ವಾರ್ ಅಂತ ಎಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಡಿಫೈನ್ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈಗ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ವಾರ್ ಹಿಂದೆ ಆಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಈ ಸಮಸ್ಯೆಗಳನ್ನ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಈ ಒಂದು ಆರ್ಗನೈಸೇಷನ್ ಸೆಟಪ್ ಅನ್ನ ಮಾಡಿದ್ವಿ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ವಿ ನೀಡ್ ಪೀಸ್ ಇನ್ ದ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್. ವಿ ನೀಡ್ ಟು ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಪೀಸ್ ಇನ್ ದ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್. ಆ ನಿಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಹ್ಯುಮ್ಯಾನಿಟೇರಿಯನ್ ಲಾ ಅಂಡ್ ಲಾ ಆಫ್ ವಾರ್ ಬಂತಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ತುಂಬಾ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಅಂತ ನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಭಾವನೆ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಲಾ ಆಫ್ ವಾರ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾಳೆ ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ರು ಬಂದು ಅಟ್ಯಾಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು, ನಿಮ್ಮನ್ನ ಎನಿ ಟೈಮ್ ಅಟ್ಯಾಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಕೆಮಿಕಲ್ ಬಾಂಬ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು, ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಟೀರಿಯಲಾಜಿಕಲ್ ಬಾಂಬ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮೈಕ್ರೋ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಟೀರಿಯಲಾಜಿಕಲ್ ವೆಪನ್ಸ್. ಈಗ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ವಾರ್ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಫಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಮೊದ್ಲಿನಂಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಿಂದೆ ಏನು ಆನೆಗಳು ಒಂಟೆಗಳನ್ನ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಯುದ್ಧ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ವಿ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಈಗ ಆ ಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನೀವು ಗಂಗೋತ್ರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕುತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಒಂದ್ ಬಟನ್ ಹಾಕಿದ್ರೆ ಅಮೆರಿಕನು ಸುಟ್ಟಾಕ್ಬೋದು ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಸೊ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅವನ್ನ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಲಾ ಆಫ್ ವಾರ್, ಯುದ್ಧದ ಕಾನೂನು ಅನ್ನೋದು ಬೇಕು ನಮಗೆ. ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಬಹಳ ಕಷ್ಟ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ. ಓಕೆ,
ಸೊ ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಸರ್.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು
ಸರ್. ಬಸವರಾಜ್ ಕುಮಕಡ್ಡಿ ಸರ್.
ಓಕೆ, ನೈಸ್ ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ ಯು.
ನಮಸ್ತೆ ಸರ್. ನಮಸ್ತೆ ಸರ್. ಹೌ ಆರ್ ಯು ಸರ್?
Everything is fine, doing well. How are you?
I am also fine, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Hope to meet you tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Definitely, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, actually, you have covered all the aspects regarding international law, and even you have defined war, peace, and also some of the treaties, protocols, conventions. So even including International Court of Justice.
Yes.
So you have enlightened us. You have given more information to us, very useful and very relevant. So on behalf of HRDC and on behalf of all the participants, I wholeheartedly thank you, sir.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. May God bless you. I should be thankful to you.
ಏ ಇಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಇಷ್ಟ ಅದು ಒಮ್ಮೆ ಹಂಗೆ ಹೇಳೋದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ ಒಂದ್ಸರಿ.
ಸರಿ ಸರ್. ನಾಳೆ ಸಿಗ್ತೀನಿ.
ಸಿಗೋಣ ಬನ್ನಿ.